Hello po everyone, good morning. We are now live po sa
Hello po
YouTube.
everyone, good morning. We are now live po sa YouTube.
Ay, ba't
We are
nag-
now live po sa YouTube.
Bakit po kayo siya ng feedback? Okay, sige po. Thank you po, Sir Don. Again, welcome everyone and good morning po. I am Benjamin George P. Miyama III. You can just call me Benj. I am your moderator for this morning. So week 3 ng Committee on Culture and the Arts, University of the Philippines, Baguio's webinar series. So this is entitled um, Designing Local Solutions to a Global Climate Crisis. So before we officially start, again, maraming salamat sa mga attendees natin who woke up early today after I post Valentine's Day. So thank you very much po na maaga kayo nagising and you spend time to learn from our speakers, of course, our esteemed set of panelists and speakers for today. We're also very happy sa CCA na for the past 2 weeks and now on the third week, maganda po yung response and maganda yung number of participants that are entering in that are attending the webinar series. So we're very thankful. And sana po dalhin natin siya sa week 4. Next week po yan exactly the same Monday, 10 o'clock in the morning, responding through poetry naman po ang topic natin. So again, good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar series. We have 3 esteemed set of panelists for lined up for all of us today. We have Deign, Frolley Soriano from the University of the Philippines, Baguio. We have Ms. Engineer Trelly Marigza, and we have Dr. Padmapani, Perez. So before we officially start, syempre, mas maganda po if we have an icebreaker, just a quick icebreaker for everyone. So kung gusto niyo po sumagot via chat, you can answer via chat, or you can also send your answers via the Q&A tab. Makikita po niyo yan sa baba ng Zoom room natin. So again, dahil kanina po sinimulan ko na siya na post-Valentine's, I think it's very important na yung pagmamahal natin, syempre hindi lang para sa sarili or hindi lang para sa mga mahal natin sa buhay. Our love or yung love na yan ay dapat pinapakita rin natin sa environment. So technically that's the pinaka-parameter, pinaka-baseline ng ating discussion this morning. That we have to extend whatever we have, our knowledge and our skills on how we can protect the environment. So isa pong quick question lang, if this morning after Valentine's, what were your initial actions or behavior that you think were very productive or were very helpful in terms of how we can protect or how we can provide solutions to the environment. So for example, ano po, kung ako, kanina umaga, post-Valentine, dahil wala naman po akong date. So technically, hindi naman po ako gumastos, hindi ako lumabas kahapon, so nanatili lang po ako sa bahay. So I just woke up early in the morning, I had my cup of coffee, tapos tinabi ko po yung coffee beans ko, tapos ginawa ko siyang parang humidifier para po siyang, ang tawag dito, yung nilalagay po sa bathroom para hindi mag-smell yung bathroom. So I was able to use the coffee beans na para siyang activated charcoal this morning. So dahil yun naman, simpleng buhay lang naman po ako. Just had my coffee this morning and then ginawa ko lang din siyang parang activated charcoal. So if ever someone ay gumawa rin po ng mga ganong klaseng actions to show at least a simple way of providing or at least sharing knowledge or sharing skills on how we can provide local solutions to global climate change and whatnot and issues on environment, maganda rin po sana yan. If also you're active on environment issues and social activities, maganda rin po siyang i-share. Just a quick icebreaker sa mga participants natin. And even panelists, kung may gusto rin po kayong may share. If meron po. Ayan, meron po ata sa chat. Good morning. Meron po ba? Just a quick one answer lang po before we proceed with the entire program. Interspecies Love from Dr. Padma, Fed My Dogs. Ayan po. Kasalukuyan po, nandito rin po ako sa College of Arts and Communications sa UP Baguio and we have cats sa college. And of course, nandito po sila and we also feed them. Ayan. So thank you po, Interspecies Love. We have to feed our dogs or our pets. Kahit hindi natin silang pets, maganda rin if we take care. Eggshells for gardening, yes po. Yan. And banana peelings, yan, from Engineer Trelly Marigza. Yan. Thank you very much po. That's from our panelists. So now we will officially begin our week 3 webinar series po natin. So again, welcome everyone and good morning. This is Designing Local Solutions to a Global Climate Crisis, which is our Week 3 webinar series brought to you by the Committee on Culture and the Arts ng University of the Philippines, Baguio. It's an administrative committee po from the University of the Philippines, Baguio. Ayan. So, just a quick background din po kung ano yung DEMHA. We introduced this po through our chair, Professor Farah Manuel Nolasco, na introduce naman ito no first week. But just to give a glimpse po dun sa DEMHA, it's an Ibalite term which means to open the eyes after a long time. DEMHA is becoming. So becoming awake after a long slumber, becoming aware after the inebriation, becoming alive after a lingering illness, becoming conscious after the unconsciousness. All of our creative processes are a means of becoming, of opening the eyes momentarily, finally, intentionally, unwittingly. So napakaganda po of opening the eyes, especially in our topic today, na designing solutions for climate change. And something now we take for granted most of the time, and we have to participate, syempre, sa discussion, sa discourse, and of course, yung actions for it. So, okay. So, start na po tayo. I think our presenters, our panelists, and speakers po natin, they are prepared. I am going to read all of their bio notes in one. Just quick house rules lang po. I'm going to read all of their bio notes in one. And then, after po nila magsalita from Deign, Soriano, Engineer Trelly Marigza, and Dr. Padmapani Perez, we will open the question and answer portion immediately after po ng mga presentation nila, so as not to burden all of our speakers po na one speaker tapos Q&A. Maganda po yung Q&A natin is towards the end or nasa dulo na po, so we can have more enriching discussion later. Okay, so simulan na po ako. Deign Frolley Soriano, MX Deign Frolley Soriano from Baguio City, is a faculty member of the Department of Biology from the University of the Philippines, Baguio, or UP Baguio. He is the current member of the National Youth Council of the Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines, or WWF Philippines, campaigner for Save Philippine Seas, SPS, and a member of the ISIALI Amplify Alumni Mobilization Program through Leadership and Influence to Filipino Youth 4.0. Yeah, so he obtained his Bachelor of Science in Biology in 2016 and is currently pursuing his Master of Science in Conservation and Restoration Ecology, or MSCare, from the University of the Philippines, Baguio. In his full-time work as a faculty member of UP Baguio, he is involved in several academic research endeavors as of the moment, one on biodiversity and conservation opportunities, and another on biodiversity assessment of urban green spaces. Very promising po yan. He has been affiliated with several student organizations during his undergraduate years, namely the Philippine Society for the Study of Nature Junior, or PSSN Junior, UP Samahan ng mga Eskola ng Kagawaran ng Agam at Teknolohiya, UP SICAT, UPB Tinigamayanan, and became Executive for Education and Culture and eventually President of UP Namnama Baguio, the 2017 Most Outstanding UNESCO Club in the Philippines, for raising awareness on Ilocano culture, education, and values. He is also currently affiliated as the Secretary General with the All UP Academic Employees Union Baguio chapter and has been a member of the UP Baguio Kasarian Center office. So Deign is also a Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, or ISIALI, academic fellow under the Global Environmental Issues and Natural Resource Management Program at the Museum and Mike Mansfield Center at the University of Montana. In addition, he is the project coordinator of the ISIALI, or YCALI, Small Grants Funded Project, Project FLOW, or Flow, Future Leaders of Water. He has been recently nominated and became a grand finalist for the EWC Earth Optimism Awards for Southeast Asia under the Research and Discovery category. So for the past 6 years, Deign Frolley Soriano has been advocating for the protection of species and the conservation of ecosystems and habitats. He personally believes that environmental protection, awareness, and sustainable living are core facets that should permeate, para po lang cells, di ba, into the lifestyle of every Filipino. At 24, Deign is an independent, ambitious, determined, and optimistic Filipino citizen who aspires for nothing but the best for our environment and for our people. So that's MX. Deign Frolley Soriano. So now we have Engineer Trelly Marigza naman. Trelly A. Marigza is a chemical engineer and has worked in the academe and various government units and non-government organizations in the field of health and communications, research, community and organizational development, conflict transformation, mediation, and policy development. So her advocacies include human rights, especially for women and children, environmental sustainability, good governance, policies, and other fields. So she took up Master of Arts in Science teaching from the Negros Oriental State University, Master of Arts in Education major in Mathematics from the University of the Cordilleras, a diploma, in science teaching from the University of the Philippines Open University, and Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from St. Louis University. She is also a visual artist who has exhibited in various places in the Philippines and other countries. She has been the executive director of the Ecumenical Resource Center Pilipinas Incorporated and the Negros Oriental Family Planning Reproductive Health Advocacy Network Incorporated. So, Engineer Trelly Marigza has also worked as researcher for the Institute of Religion and Culture, advocacy officer for the Peace Resource Center, faculty of the University of the Cordilleras and Silliman University, and she is now a freelance consultant on gender concerns, environmental advocacy, human sexuality, and other programs. So let us give a hand to Engineer Trelly Marigza naman for that. And of course, thank you po. Sana assuming nakarinig po ako ng mga palakpakan. Anyway, our third and final speaker for this morning is Dr. Padmapani Perez. So Dr. Padmapani Perez is an anthropologist by training and a writer by heart. So Padma received her doctorate from the Faculty of Social Sciences at Leiden University, the Netherlands, in 2010. Her poems and essays have been anthologized in various Philippine publications, including Agam, Filipino Narratives on Uncertainty and Climate Change, ICSC 2014. She is currently Asia editor and project lead for the Agam Agenda, a special project of the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities. She serves on the board of directors of Global Seed Savers Philippines and Seed Change, respectively. So Padma authored Green Entanglements, Nature Conservation, Indigenous Peoples' Rights in Indonesia and the Philippines under the University of the Philippines Press back in 2018. And Shella goes to a Danga, tama po, ano? Alam-Am Publishing, or through the Alam-Am Publishing back in 2016. That's a Kalanguya children's book. So Padma is co-founder of Baguio City's Haven for Book Lovers, Mount Cloud Bookshop. Dahil personal love and fan din po ako nasa number 1 Yanko Street lang po sila. So they have very good line of Filipiniana books out there. So again, let us give a hand for all of our 3 panelists. And Deign, Frolley, Soriano will officially begin yung ating set of presentation for this morning. You can share your screen. Deign, maraming salamat.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for the introduction again. So while I'm sharing my screen, apologies lang if in case you hear background noises like dogs barking and all that. At least i-imbibe na natin yung nature and environment habang nagsasalita tayo. But hopefully you can see my my screen now. Nakikita na ba?
Not yet.
For a moment.
Yeah, sure.
There. Okay. So once again, thank you very much for the opportunity and for the invitation to talk. I feel pressured really together with my co-speakers. Nakaka-pressure kasi ano bang ambag ko? Teka lang, nakaka-pressure sa panahon ngayon in this year, 2021. Ito na talaga yung year of ano bang ambag mo sa lipunan. But hopefully I can share some, insights with my experience as part of different youth organizations, me being a faculty member and a young researcher in UP Baguio, and also my other engagements, particularly in the field of environmentalism. So, the title of my talk is Ecological Revolution of Protecting Our Environment and Natural Heritage. So I'm Deign, hindi ko na yan ipapakilala, but again, I feel grateful for this opportunity. But let me start off with this. We have always been a nation of unparalleled riches. And when you search for like articles online on Google about the Philippines being one of the 17 mega diverse countries in the world, magpapakita yan all over Google, and you will be given a lot of, studies related to the biodiversity of our country. So we're surrounded with water, we also have very rich lands, and we also have rich diversity of flora and fauna, animals and plants. But the question is, why does it matter? Why does it matter for someone who's 25 years old to take care of the planet that we live in? the thing is, 5% of the total GDP of this country depends on natural resources, and 15% of the country's labor force is totally independent on our natural resources and biodiversity. And of course, every one of us, the 110 million Filipinos, depend so much on our natural resources. So, pagising mo pa lang sa umaga, lahat ng kakalikutin mo has been, extracted or sourced out from the environment. So, we're all interconnected and interlinked with our environment, with nature. And the thing is, we are on the brink of losing our natural heritage. And this is a very, scary ending for everyone, not just the Filipinos, but all over the globe. Everyone living in this planet is, this has to be a concern for everyone because we are on that edge of losing our ecological and natural heritage. Biodiversity is declining at different rates and at different places around the globe. So if you've read researches and articles about, plants and animals being extinct or being critically endangered, those are, warning signs that we are on that brink of losing our treasure and our natural heritage. It's no longer climate change we're living through, it's environmental breakdown, and this is from a 2019 article from a climate change scientist. So we call it now environmental breakdown because these are actually, different hierarchies and different scales of destruction, not only in terms of climate but also, in terms of the immediate physical and ecological environment. And then also we spend, and the thing is, it's not just spending, we overspend, we go beyond, and it's really terrifying. So we spend a lot for food, we spend a lot of resources, and the thing is, we go beyond the carrying capacity of our environment, we go beyond the carrying capacity of our planet, and that's really terrifying. And food insecurity, it's a real thing. In the Philippines alone, if you're going to contextualize that problem in the Philippines, we really have, a concern, we really have an issue or a problem about food insecurity. Prices of food items are now really expensive in the market. And I think that, we always say that the Philippines is an agricultural country, but at some point in our lives, we have to, think and ponder about the idea na bakit hindi natin malutas-lutas yung problema natin sa gutom ng mga mahihirap na kababayan natin. And there are a lot of, issues about food insecurity, food waste, and all that, which is all related also on how we take care of our environment. How do we source sustainably from our environment? And we don't just lose nature, we also lose people. And I think the greatest manifestation of this is the last year, the pandemic that had, occurred last year and still occurring right now. We're losing people because we're not taking care of our environment, of our nature so much. And I think that it's a manifestation of, how we perceive and how we make meaning of nature, not only as a source of our needs, but also as a habitat, as a place of, refuge, or as a home. Now, the question is, because I'm given, a limited amount of time, how do we change that ending? There are warning signs of environmental breakdown and, environmental problems. But when you're reading a book, sometimes you get to anticipate the ending of a specific novel or a specific book that you're reading. But sometimes the difference about a book and this one right here is we can change our ending. We're sort of like the authors of this book, of this journey that we're trying to write. And how do we change the ending? So when I was a graduating student in UP Baguio, so I'm a proud UP Baguio student, yes. I became part of the National Youth Council of WWF Philippines, Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines. So if you're familiar with the panda logo, that's it. Um, so our goal was to actually bridge the youth to the council and to the WWF organization so that we're able to come up with projects and initiatives that are actually based or contextualized and apt for the youth and the younger audiences. So because the WWF initiatives are more of the serious, it's sort of like for the seniors in a way. There we had to reach out to youth members because there are a lot of younger individuals who are passionate enough and who are inspired to make a difference in terms of their environment, but really they don't have that enough platform. So we were, convened to form this council so that we had, projects on the youth for the youth. So I'm there together with our climate change ambassador, Miss Mikey Kowanko Jaworski, and then together with my co-council. And the thing about this council is that we are, sort of like multidisciplinary. So some of the people in the youth council are not only biologists or scientists. There are social scientists that are working in human ecology. There's someone working on psychology. There's one working in anthropology, one on tourism and economics. So it's a multidisciplinary team of youth working for the youth. So here are some of our projects that we would like to share. I would like to share, and these are some of the projects that we have initiated from 2017 to last year, 2020. So I had the opportunity to go to Sorsogon, where in Donsol, Sorsogon, where you can, encounter the famous butanding or the whale sharks. And the core of the youth council is actually on environmental education. So we're not just working at a corporate level, which is usually the branding of the WWF Philippines, but we're also working with the youth at the grassroots level. And I think for me personally, that's my goal as a young, environmentalist and a young scientist, that sometimes it's really nice to initiate change at the very, bottom portion of the hierarchy or of the scale. So get to mingle with children. I get to mingle with the youth about the environment and share about my experience in the in a laymanized way. Okay. So again, those are some activities. The photos that you see right here are photos that I have taken in Palawan. So we had another environmental education session with elementary students and SK Federation officials in San Vicente in Palawan. So we went there, we taught kids about the biodiversity of our planet, specifically on Palawan. And it's really nice to mingle with the youth because they have a different perception of their environment compared to adults. Since I'm working also with a research project on indigenous communities in northern Luzon and Cordilleras, there's really a difference in terms of their perception of the environment and of their natural surrounding, particularly for the kids and the youth. So it's really nice working with them. And then we also have other projects like this one, the Ayoko ng Plastic campaign, also the Earth Hour, which is, I think, the most famous, most publicized environmental initiative all over the globe. And then we also had Green Wonder, which is a project for sustainable travel. And then as part of the NYC, we have a legacy project known as Pamana. So these are some of the highlights and of our, successes for the community. So in 2017, we were able to reach more than 7,000 students and more than 6,000 community members all over the Philippines. We had different projects and communication activities. And in 2018, nagdoble yung number na yun. We had 1.2 million WWF social media reach and all over 12,000 students and 385 community members. But this was only the first 2 quarters of 2018. And here are some of our major campaigns. We have an NYC student affiliate organizations where we link student organizations all over the Philippines so that we have, we have a hub of environmental groups, of student groups that are working for the environment. And again, it was mentioned in my bio note last time that, I currently, am the coordinator of Project Flow, or Future Leaders of Water, which is actually another environmental education campaign that I pitched when I was in the US for a fellowship program on the environment. And this is, this project was inspired by me being, born and raised in Bataan, and also when I grew up in the Cordilleras, particularly in the province of Abra, because I realized that we have a lot of rivers, we have a lot of watersheds in the Cordillera. I think that it's apt that I, create a project for the Cordilleran community, which is based on that particular environment, that particular area. So I pitched the Future Leaders of Water, which, had funding. But naka ano pa to naka-park pa because of the pandemic. We can't really, implement anything yet because of the border restrictions. So, but here's Project Flow, and it's an environmental education campaign for the youth in the Cordilleran region. So together with my colleagues in Vietnam, who's now a medical doctor, a chemical engineer from Indonesia, and one from the Philippines, a civil engineer. Now, I'm in the last part of my presentation, actually. I'm just sharing, insights of what I do. The thing with WWF and the thing with my engagement in other NGOs and also in, being a UPB faculty member and being a young researcher and scientist is that there's always, that urge for you to conduct or to initiate a project. But sometimes, dun nagkakatalo yung mga advocates and change makers because it's always just a plan or a vision. But really, what's important is that you're able to transform that vision into a concrete or achievable goal. So for you, if you want or if you have a very simple vision in mind that you want to go zero waste or you want to reduce the waste that you are producing in a day, you have to turn that into something concrete. And that's one thing when you're initiating projects in communities like in the Cordillera or in any other place in the Philippines or around the globe. It should not stop at a plan or just a vision. It should materialize. It should concretize later on into an achievable goal. And the thing is, the earth without art is just since it's the arts month. I've learned this from one of my mentors, Miss Anna Oposa, who's actually the chief mermaid executive director of Save Philippine Seas. I've learned this line from one of her talks, and the earth without art is just And the thing is, in the Youth Council in WWF Philippines and in all other organizations, I can't just speak or I can just blurt out scientific words or scientific names for that matter because people won't understand me. The youth won't understand if I start saying Pithecofaga Jeffrey or something like that because they won't appreciate it. And for us to be able to reach out to communities, whether the younger audiences or the most senior ones, we have to translate it into a medium where it's understandable for all. So it's always art, and art may come into different forms. So music and visual arts. So sometimes we allow our kids, the children with during our environmental education campaigns to really express themselves through art. So there are painting classes, sculpture, and all that. So we use art as a medium to share our advocacy and to share our causes for the environment. So really, the earth without art is just again, as a scientist, the foundation of any environmental work is science. I think even, the COVID-19 pandemic response or anything should be science-based. This is the first S that we need to remember. Everything has to be science-based because policies are actually, anchored or founded on the basis of science. But also, you have to consider society. What are the plans or what are the societal contexts that you need to consider if you want to initiate a project or if you want to initiate an activity? Kasi hindi pwedeng pinagduduldulan mo palagi dahil alam mo yung ganitong bagay or because you feel like this project will improve their lives. Because there are the people who know their problem, and the thing is, mas alam nila yung problema nila kaysa sayo, and you're just there offering solutions. So it's also trying to reach out, but trying to, consult with them and share your ideas and also learn from their, experiences as societal members. And last thing is sustainability. In the long run, when you're designing or when you're coming up with your own initiatives, whether small scale or large scale, kung nyari ang gusto mo lang naman i-improve yung waste management system ng barangay nyo, that can be a small scale project. Or if you want to improve the conditions of the whole planet Earth, then that can be a large scale project. But the thing is, are your initiatives sustainable? Will it be, you know, would you attain the goals of your projects in the long run? At kaya ba yun i-repeat ng mga members ng communities mo kahit wala ka na? And the goal of any, I think, environmentalist is that sana hindi na rin kami nag-exist. Yung parang bawat tao sa mundo, bawat Filipino for that matter, would know the spirit of environmentalism and would know the importance of our ecological and environmental heritage. But all of these S's, the science, which I believe in, of course, society and sustainability, revolves on revolution. That's why I entitled my presentation Ecological Revolution. And the core of any revolution, since malapit na rin ang people power, are the four letters after the start of revolution, which is in reverse, LOVE or love. I think that, again, this is from Miss Anna Oposa, one of my, again, heroes in the field of environmentalism. I think that the greatest problem in this planet is not climate change or environmental breakdown, but apathy. Yung wala kasi tayong pakialam. 'Di ba? Parang may nagkakalat dyan, wala tayong pakialam. And we're just on social media, we're just, whining about stuff. But if we have the, the opportunity, or we have the avenue to initiate change, then I think it's better for everyone, for our planet to, be anchored on the spirit of love and revolution. So, yeah. Also, things that I have learned from doing, environmental work for the past 6, 7 years is to make it personal. And it's not about you being, the scientist or the social scientist. It's about the people you're trying to serve. It's a personal learning for me na even if you know all the sciences behind, the photosynthesis and all the ecological processes of the environment, hindi nila ma-appreciate yon. You have to make it personal. Sometimes they care about the environment, but it's not enough for them to act on something. And you have to show them the human cost. So say for example, when you're working with community members living near a protected area, or say for example a forest, what's at stake pag nawala yung forest? So try to find, the human cost for them pag nawala yung mga ganong klaseng riches sa kanilang paligid. Also, you draw the inspiration from the most impacted people. That's one thing I have learned also from doing environmental work and from all the initiatives. You have to draw inspiration from the most impacted, affected people. Na parang, yung spirit of empathy and compassion, parang ano ba yung nararamdaman nila on their own shoes? Kung nasisira yung kanilang kagubatan, nasisira yung karagatan, ano yung nawawala sa kanila? And from that, you try to formulate a solution, an initiative, a project na makakasagot sa mga problema nila. So you're just there to, really guide them in the right course of action for the environment. And the thing is, when your projects or your initiatives become a success, yung mga most impacted, most affected people, sila kasi yung pinaka magbe-benefit from your project, not really you. No, parang kasi iniisip natin na pag naging successful yung project, magiging, parang hero tayo, sikat tayo. But it's not really you, it's them, because they will benefit most from your project in case it gets successful. So you draw inspiration from them because most of the time, those projects, initiatives, yun yung mga nagtatagal, yun yung mga nagiging sustainable na projects natin in the long run. So, with that, I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. It's really short. I really tried to, condense everything, my experiences for doing, environmental work, particularly for the youth, a young scientist, a young researcher, a young educator. But I hope you have, you got some insights of, what I do for a living also. And, yung advocacy ko for the environment. Even though, sometimes I get threats. Legit to, talagang I receive threats for my life for protecting the planet. But, Mother Nature is a great client, really. But she does not pay very well. Pero, in return, nabubuhay tayong lahat. So, I think it should be our panata to really take care of our planet because we only have one Earth. So thank you very much. Good day.
Thank you. Maraming salamat, Deign, for that very comprehensive discussion. Um, Again, we will entertain questions from our attendees or our participants later after our final after our last speaker. Pero just to wrap yung talk na ni Dane very quickly, what I got really is the purpose of this ecological revolution that nag-start din kasi siya on how we are interconnected. Eh. So ibig sabihin makikita natin that no matter how much, how different we are in terms of discipline, of field and whatnot, collective pa rin kasi siya. So ibig sabihin, all of the things that we input in the discussion, all of the things that we share in action and whatnot, pag collective siya nakikita, mas mangyayari ecological revolution na to. That's guided by, sabi nga rin ni Dane, by love, by LOVE. So it can be translated into art, it can be translated into science, and therefore it can work with the science sustainability and society altogether. Ayan. So anyway, again, our questions you can just submit it via the Q&A tab. You can find them below sa baba, and then we will entertain them after Dr. Padmapani Perez finishes her presentation later. So now we move on to our second presenter, our second speaker. So we have Engineer Trelly Marigza. Good morning, ma'am. You can share your slide, your presentation now.
Okay. Sure. Okay, kita ba? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello,
po.
good morning. Yes, okay lang. Sige. Sige, just to clear, siguro medyo na-confuse ako dun sa time frame ng ating presentation coverage ng presentation, no? Kasi yung guide na naibigay sa akin was more on experiences during the pandemic. But anyway, so I'll try to cope with that. I entitled my presentation, Fighting for Our Home on Fire. Let us start with the Presidential Proclamation number 683, series of 1991 by then Corazon Aquino, declaring February as National Arts Month. So doon naman nakatay itong ating activity, no? So as with most decrees to come before it, National Arts Month has the intention that is laudable and necessary. But despite its noble nature and how the public perception of the arts and artists have evolved and therefore improved, it is difficult to say that after 30 years, we have truly significantly progressed in terms of how we are treating and understanding our creative human resources, their works and emphasis. I'm happy to note that you included the issue on climate change in your DEMHA. The Ibaloy neighbor said it's DEMTRA. Okay, so this pandemic is, whether you admit it or not, linked to the disturbance of our environment. It is with hope that we don't have fascist enabling artists or ones who proclaim to be not political and still oblivious to the worsening climate crisis and establishments that regularly promote an ideal that further tightens their own tightly knit communities. This year's NCCA theme, Alab Sining, Alab Sigla, hopes to use the fires of creativity, the burning desire to create, in order to uplift our lives in a time that is still in the clutches of the pandemic. Beautiful and inspiring, may push us to go beyond our self-congratulations and wield the flames to shed light on what drains the world of its spirit. Today, though, we will share more on my experiences as an environmental advocate who is accidentally an artist at heart as well. I am a part of different environmental groups as founder or member, like the Save Tanyon Strait Citizens Movement, the Friends of the Environment in Negros Oriental, and the Save Mount Talinis, Our Life, Our Home. These were my groups when I was staying in the Visayas for almost 20 years. But right now, since I am in Baguio, I'm now involved with the climate consciousness movement, with the core group Climate Consciousness and Action Group, whose members Actually, are individuals coming from the churches and church institutions, NGOs, schools, and the local government units. Advocacy is both an art and science, and we must learn to do it right. Environmental advocacy needs a heart that is passionate about all of God's creation, a knowledge and understanding of our role as part of that creation, and our responsibility of sustaining it. We need to be inclusive in our work. Environmental activism is not a contest, but adding up its one's effort to sustain our planet and its resources and put a dent on this global crisis worsened by the global pandemic of COVID-19 and B117. We need to work hard on policy advocacy and lifestyle change. Education about the climate crisis and informed decision making to create solutions is much needed even today. We need to reach out to all sectors through networking, linkaging, and fundraising. We need to use all the appropriate technology presented to us and adapt and upgrade. We were just doing, face-to-face training, seminars, meetings, demo farms here in Baguio. But now we need to do them online as well, where the older generations may not be familiar with the technology. Usual gardening and container gardening by the now plantitos and plantitas is promoted not only for ornamental plants but for food supply. Model gardens and rainforestation are also promoted. Waste management in the homes, schools, and establishments encouraged and taught, like composting, bokashi, recycling, possible refusal of single-use plastics, and practicing zero-waste lifestyle. We also had a video production on zero waste and the ban on incinerators, which is one of the projects on the list by Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalo. Policy advocacy is an essential part of our advocacy. So, some of the activities that we have done is participation in the Global Day for Climate Action, together with Fridays for Future, climate implementation of the Climate Consciousness Week, where we also discussed faith perspectives on climate change. We had a bird exhibit in partnership with DepEds, particularly with USEC Alain Pasqua, and trainings and the practice of urban and organic gardening. So these are some of the pictures of, I just chose a few of the activities that we have had recently. So during this pandemic, we still continued to do all of these activities. We had more consultations with various groups because of the availability or accessibility due to Zoom meetings and all that. Engagements with the city council. Most of us have gone through online courses and webinars, both national and international. And of course, the observance of the Zero Waste Month. We joined the petitions. These are just two of the petitions that we have had. These are the national petitions, the single-use plastic ban petition and the scrap waste to energy bill. We participated in the review of the Book 4 of the Environment Code of the City, which is basically on the waste management, solid waste management. And we are part of the Voices from the Ground production of different groups, which I will mention later on. And of course, if we can now show the clip before I continue. So do I need to stop sharing so you can show the video clip?
Sige po, ma'am.
Okay. there's this proposal of waste to energy, but of course that will not work out. Unang-una, wala tayong site for that. Secondly, waste to energy is basically incineration. The most dangerous thing on the waste to energy is the emission. That they go into the water, into the soil, into our food chain, and of course the air that we breathe.
Baguio has an ordinance which does say that we should not be actually using plastic to package the things we buy from the market. You can say no to plastic. You can tell the sellers, please do not put everything in plastic. Kasi nakakatulong tayo sa environment.
Okay. Okay, so that's a clip of the launching of the Nobel Filipinas ban on the waste to energy projects. Okay, next. Yeah. So even simple moments of getting into a restaurant, if you recognize this this in one of the restaurants here in Baguio City. So even this experience has us produce poems about this about this table. So I made the poem "The Table," and I did know that my husband also made another poem in which the title is "I Once Was a Part of a Majestic Tree." So these are just some of our activities, and if you would like to see more, you can visit our Facebook page. So in my personal advocacy, I had adventures, learning, dangers, threats, like-minded friends, failures, but more victories. It was never about economic gain, but fulfillment in being part of sustaining a safe and nourishing community for my children and the next generations. Despite my limitations, I continued to push on for needed reforms and programs for those advocacies. I may not see the results in my lifetime, but I push on. There are times that the passion waver, but I continually thank God for all the people I work with and continue to learn from. That encourages me to go on. So tackling the challenges. In 2019, we set to work campaigning for a local national government to adopt a climate action plan and tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. Then the coronavirus pandemic swept across the globe and upended life as we all know it. Much like the climate emergency, the pandemic has affected the most vulnerable both at home and abroad. As we look to rebuild our lives and systems, we need a recovery plan that changes all lives for the better, leaving no one behind. It needs to safeguard the future prosperity of our planet by guaranteeing everyone a dignified life and a fair income. It also needs to protect the food systems and ecosystems that sustain us all. We've already seen the power of a community in action. We deserve a plan from government that recognizes this strength, empowers people, and gives them the resources needed to lead the recovery. We continue to support the bill and the rights of nature, ban on incinerators, aka waste to energy, and the ban on single-use plastic. This time of pandemic set a lot of restrictions, especially on our mobility, source of livelihood, basic services, and spiritual growth. We needed to adapt to new technology in communication, education, economic growth. Like other organizations, we used webinars and social media for education and information dissemination purposes. We partnered with No Burn Philippines, Break Free from Plastic and Zero Waste Coalition to produce a documentary on the campaign to ban incinerators in the Philippines, as we have seen the clip earlier. There are always bashers and oppositions, but we know what is right. We only tell the truth and stand our ground. We choose our strategic wars and not waste our time and energies. We have to make sure that our heart and passion is strong and in the right place. Before the declaration of the enhanced community quarantine, we had an agreement with Chancellor Raimundo Rovillos that I would put up an exhibit at UP Baguio before I move it down to Manila. But then, of course, the ECQ was declared, and hence the exhibit happened. I have exhibited about women and nature and environment in the country and abroad. I once visited an artist hub in Germany where I met with these artists living together or sharing their studios in one compound. They're enhancing their art and individual advocacies, making their own colors, dyes, paints, materials, and others, minimizing their impact on the environment. As artists or painters, how are we helping the environment? Do we even care about the toxicity of our materials? Where do we source them? How do we dispose of our waste? We are in an era of chronic emergency. Diseases are more likely to travel further and faster than before, which means we must be faster in our responses. It needs investments, change in human behavior, and it means we must listen to people at the community levels. Several issues that we saw during this pandemic is, of course, first of all, the quarantine, which restricted our mobility, and the result on the economy. We had scaled down our activities because our captured audience, for example, from the LGU, the schools, the churches, also scaled down their activities and participation. We are, of course, dismayed by the Philippine decision to cut down from 98% to 50% our target on carbon reduction. And of course, especially here in Baguio, we observed that tree cutting proliferation during the pandemic, even up to this day, dyan sa my home sweet home. And now they're at the bishop's house, where they are now widening and threatening the trees there. Of course, as a result of the pandemic, we have more medical waste. Garbage may be seen less on the streets, but there are more on the home because people are quarantined inside homes. And of course, increased packaging. Nauso na yung order grab. So we have petitions actually on Lazada and Shopee to reduce their packaging materials. It's a big loss for us, also because of the deaths of some of our members and alliances like Rafi Kapunan, Kagawad Cesar Tade, Attorney Dan Francia, and Mr. Greg Aberia of the Office of the Congressman. And the present mechanisms that we have in Baguio, like having the QR code before you can enter the city hall, your bag in my pocket, which is very invasive of our identities and all that, which restrict our access to our LGU offices and departments. So for lessons, do we go for the egocentric ba na pagtingin natin sa nature or not? This creation bears the mark of God. We love God and all of creation and one another. Ito nga yung emphasis ni Deign kanina, yung from revolution and love. But we have failed to live out love. We disrupt ecosystems and we shake viruses loose from their natural host. So they look for a new host, which is now the humans. Pathogens evolve, they mutate, and there are no species boundaries in these mutations. We need to commit ourselves to live lives of integrity and justice, where we shall share all God's resources equitably, reduce carbon footprint, strengthen the call for climate justice, and advocate for policies that will restore ecological balance. We call on our government to govern with integrity and compel corporations to operate with the highest environmental and labor standards wherever they do business. Economic downturn and quarantine have hit the poor the hardest. There's no employment insurance, they live paycheck to paycheck, there are no social safety nets. Our decision makers must make their decisions based on informed choice. We need to connect dots because everything is linked. The next generations must be trained on sustainability, and we can start it with the kids. Your elders are already at the departure area, and we need the younger generations to experience them. Open your eyes to the realities of this declining world we live in. You are not just the hope of our motherland, but you must be the solution to the existent issues in your own locality. Education is the key to our environmental issues, but to take action is crucial. Solutions start in education and awareness, and to rethink urban infrastructure. Long-term efforts call for an overhaul of current approaches to urban planning and development. We need to be prepared, and we have to have mitigation plans to take into account the worst possible scenario. We need our local government to implement our environmental laws and start from convening the climate change committee and formulate or implement a climate change plan for the city. There should also be an effective program planning and implementation for the National Consciousness Week. And we all need to lobby for them to abandon the incinerator Aka waste to energy plan and support the proposed bill on the rights of nature on the national level. And for our children's sake, please, Baguio, stop cutting trees. We run in political action, internally and externally, and demand changes in technology, public policy, and economic rules to embrace the great transformations needed to maintain a stable climate. We have to put our acts together, guided by appropriate science-based policies to be able to mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis. And our struggle never ends because greed. So I'd like to end my presentation with a poem that I wrote during this pandemic. So viral pandemic, what do we know about it? How do we protect ourselves from it? From where do we seek help? Information has been put out, but ignored. Government leadership is inutile. Health systems are failures. Economic aid inefficient. Freedom curtailed. Health issues dealt with. Military solutions. Spiritual guidance amiss. Risky. How can we protect self and family? Have we exposed ourselves to this killer virus? When will this end? The thought weighs down on brain and heart. It takes a toll on one's well-being. Violence ensues, twist the mind in turmoil. Nowhere to run to. Many are at the forefront, courageously battling the unseen foe, sacrificing life, limb, and family. Exhausted, pained, helpless, angry, needing all the help and support they can get. Who extends a hand? Death, it's so out there right now, but we are but skin about a wind, with muscles clenched against mortality. A painful death or sweet release. We grieve at the loss of loved ones, a grief we have not known. How do you grieve from afar when your physical presence is barred to give the needed care, to give a loving, comforting hug, to take the last look, to condole, sympathize, and comfort? Life, a borrowed one. Was it snatched from them? Was it their time to return to their maker? Were they ready? Was their purpose fulfilled? Still, we hand them over to our maker, assured that they have lived their lives to the fullest, have served their purpose, Life goes on. We have to move on and celebrate their life with gratitude that they shared it with us. When our time comes, will we be ready? I chose this poem to share with you because I believe that saving nature, saving our environment is saving ourselves. So for more information, you can just go to our FB page, call us, write us in our emails or text us. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you.
Maraming salamat. Thank you very much po, Engineer Trelly Marigza. We will entertain questions addressed to you po later after Dr. Padmapani Perez. So thank you very much po for that. Just a quick summary lang din ng discussion ni Engineer Trelly Marigza. What I really got is from the poem po, parang yun po yung gusto kong gawing parang angkla nung end po ng discussion niya, that 2 points po from the piece, that violence ensues, but how do we grieve from afar? That's very, very powerful because violence ensues with your previous points po on yung ginagawa for environment. It's not about myself. It's not about my economic and personal growth or whatnot or benefits. It's for the fulfillment in sustaining the environment, and it's something that's outward, something that's external, and for the other people. It's for us, for all of us. And then on point po nung how do you grieve from afar, babalikan ko lang din po yung point niyo na I might not see the results in my lifetime. I might see the results. The next generation might see the results. But there's something that if I don't do anything now, how am I going to grieve from afar? Di ba parang ganun po yung dating eh. If death is upon me, it's parang nandun yung grief eh, that you didn't do anything in your lifetime. So in your experiences, the lessons from your experiences, I think the youth and the attendees, the participants can learn from it to be able to participate now, to like their page, to be on ground, to be in different grassroots levels and community engagement. Kahit na malayo tayo and remote tayo, we can still be a part of different collective work and organizational community works. Kasi again, how do we grieve from afar? If we die and we didn't do anything now, I think that's something that's more grieving and suffering. So anyway po, thank you very much po dun, Engineer Trelly Marigsa. And
Thank
now
you.
we're down to our, thank you po, down to our last but not the least, of course, na speaker natin is Dr. Padmapani Perez. So the floor is yours now, ma'am.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me at this forum, and I want to thank Deign and Engineer Trelly. We really gather strength. It feels good to hear about other people who are doing this work, and it's a reminder to all of us that we're not alone and we're all trying, and really there's a role for everyone here. So I'm going to share my screen. And what I'm going to share today is on our work at the Agam agenda. We're based with the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, which is an organization that works at the level of international policy negotiations for climate. So it's a policy think tank, but I think what sets ICSC apart from other policy think tanks is that art has always been an important part of the campaigns and the advocacy work. So what do? We try to reimagine the climate conversation by bringing in more voices, more actors, and by widening the playing field for people to talk about climate. So this is really about how are we going to tell stories of hope. As Deign and Engineer Trelly shared earlier, sometimes it can really cause us to despair, no? When we think about the impacts of the climate crisis, the mass extinction, and so on. Sometimes it's scary to the point of making us feel paralyzed and helpless. So we need stories of hope, and we need to create ways for different people to feel like they can speak about climate change and they can do something about it. So the Agam agenda, what do? What is our agenda? No? So first, we want to widen the storytelling circle around climate discourse. Second, we want to create and share stories that will have an impact on how uncertainty and the climate crisis are understood. So uncertainty can be very frightening. We all felt that, and we still live with that uncertainty now under the pandemic, but it can also be an opportunity. And an uncertainty means that the ending hasn't been written. And as both Deign and engineer Trelly said, how do we change the ending? No? So uncertainty is actually, it works to our favor. Third, we want to produce engaging content and materials that teachers, students, and campaigners can wield as tools. Four, we aim to reduce and reject dependence on jargon as a vehicle for communicating climate change. Five, we want to enable a more robust sense of agency and citizenship in the humanities and in scientific communities by bringing other disciplines together in the climate debate. And six, we seek to harness the regenerative power of the humanities, art, and imagination as we dream up and work towards kinder, equitable futures. So the Agam agenda started it started late last year, but the work was really already happening much earlier. So in 2012, these portraits were put on exhibit in the halls of the Philippine Senate at the time when the senators were debating the People's Survival Fund bill. So the People's Survival Fund bill is now our climate survival fund, which we have in the Philippines. It was enacted into law. So these are portraits of Filipinos who have survived extreme weather events and who live at the front lines of the climate crisis. And having this exhibited in the halls of the Philippine Senate when the People's Survival Fund bill was being debated added another layer to the discussion, because every day the senators had to walk through the halls to their sessions and see the faces of the people that would really be affected by their decisions. So it brought in a more human aspect to the discussion and the debates. It had a different effect from the statistics and the policy recommendations that the senators had before them. Later in 2013, these same photos were sent out to writers across the Philippines, and they were asked to use the photos as a prompt to write a poem or an essay or a short story about climate change. And they were told, you're not supposed to use the words climate change, global warming, sustainable development. Those are prohibited words for this book about climate change. So that was part of the rejection of jargon as a way of talking about climate. And the result of that was this book, Agam, Filipino Narratives on Uncertainty and Climate Change. It contains 26 images, 24 narratives in verse and prose in 8 Philippine languages. And that book continues to live on in Agam, the climate podcast, which you can follow on Spotify. We're no longer on SoundCloud, but we're on several other places where you can get your podcasts. And here we talk to writers, especially writers who've contributed to Agam, and we talk to them about what's the role of art or what's the role of writers in the climate crisis. Is there a role for us? What do we do? What do you do? How do you do your work? What's your creative process? So if I may plug this, I'd like to say that this is an interesting series for students of literature and communications and writing and journalism, and to explore because of the discussions of authors like Triselda Yabes, poets like Marjorie Evasco, and so on. And another thing that ICSC has done is to launch this exhibit in 2019 called Alas ng Bayan. and it features women heroes through time, through Philippine history, and 5 of them. And it aims to bring history and feminism into the way we engage with the nation and with the way we involve ourselves in facing the climate crisis. So here are a few examples of the paintings that were on exhibit. So I'm sure many of you know of Lorena Barros. So if you know of Lorena Barros, could I ask you please to drop a star or an asterisk in the chat box? Let's see how many people have heard of Lorena Barros. So if chat or in the Q&A box, maybe we can drop a just a star, an asterisk. I can't see the chat box at the moment, so maybe Benjamin, you can tell me if people are dropping stars. Oh, we have one from Engineer Trelly. Okay. How come nobody knows Lorena Barros? Hala kayo.
One of the panelists also.
Yes. Okay. Okay. And then there's also Commander Liwayway. Can we also get some stars for Commander Liwayway?
Maybe po they're more familiar with the Glyza de Castro Liway na pelikula.
Ayun. Oh, sige. So are you getting stars, Benjamin, for Commander Liwayway?
Not yet po.
Aha. Okay. Aha. This is interesting. We have one.
Yes po. Yan.
Engineer Trelly is asking if maybe people are afraid to say if they know. Well, you're only being asked for a star, so no need to be afraid. But this is an interesting response because, as somebody said recently, no evidence is also evidence. So, and how about Gloria Capitan? Can we see if there are any stars for Gloria Capitan? So on my screen, I see 1 star for Lorena Barros and 1 star for Commander Liwayway. Are there any stars for Gloria Capitan? Yes, there's 1. Thank you. Okay, so I'll share a little bit about Gloria Capitan because she is the most recent hero or a contemporary hero. She was part of a community-based campaign and action to fight the construction of a coal factory in Bataan, Mariveles, Bataan. And she was assassinated in July 2016. People who worked with her say that she is possibly the first case of an extrajudicial killing under this administration. And what this exhibit does, Alas ng Bayan, is it brings together organizations like the Constantino Foundation, 350.org, and of course ICSC, and a young artist to engage us with images of these women over Philippine history who have fought for our sovereignty and who have fought to protect their communities. And it's almost like we get this new sense of women holding space for each other across time to break gender stereotypes and gendered roles, and to defend what the communities that mean so much to us. So that's another thing that we did. Harvest Moon is a forthcoming anthology of poems and stories from the edge of the climate crisis, and this is coming out later this year. It has about 30 images, black and white images, and 30 climate narratives in verse and in prose again, written in 9 different languages from 24 countries around the world. And this followed the same process of Agam Book 1, where we distributed the photographs to writers as prompts and asked them to respond to the photos with a climate poem or story. And you'll see the result later this year. And then another collaborative thing we did, is this going to work? Yes. I'll just play this video. It's a 4-minute video, and then we can talk some more. Can you hear it?
No problem.
Okay, wait. Can you hear it now?
Not yet. Oh,
Hold on, let me try to fix the sound. There is a setting in which I can allow you to hear my sound on my computer. I've done this before, so I should know how to do it. But since it's not working, I'll just play it because you can read the subtitles anyway, so we can keep going.
Ma'am, check on the top portion of the Zoom window. It should be there. Share computer.
Sorry.
Audio. The top bar of your Zoom share window, ma'am.
Yes. What
There
am I
should
looking
be,
for?
the audio settings.
Uh-huh.
Click on share
Okay.
computer audio.
Audio settings.
Yes po.
Share
Audio.
computer audio. I don't have that option. Will it be under screen sharing?
No, ma'am. It's one of the controls on top of the screen, on top of the Zoom screen.
Okay, I'm looking at that now. I see a setting for turn on original sound, but I don't see the share computer audio. Will that work?
I don't think so,
Let's
ma'am.
try
But it should.
again.
Sige po.
Wala pa rin.
wala pa rin po, ma'am.
Padma, if you can send us the link through the chat box, the
Okay, I'll do
systems
that.
can play it. Can we play this, Sir Kim?
Yeah.
Through your screen, please.
Wait lang po. I'll load it.
Okay, I'll share the link so that you can just, sorry about the tech glitch, but I'll share the link so that you can play it for me. Is that okay?
Yes po. We can play it here.
Okay. It's in the panelist chat box. And meanwhile, I will continue. Could you tell me when you're ready and I'll just continue, no? Oh, now I can share computer audio. Should I?
Go ahead, ma'am. If you can share it now. No?
You can hear it now?
None yet, ma'am. I'll just share it from here.
Okay, when you're ready. Shall I continue first?
Yes, ma'am. If
Okay, I'll continue and then maybe we can just watch it at the end, no? Yan. Okay, so what I wanted to show you, and I'm really sorry about the technical glitch. I should have prepared more carefully earlier. So I wanted to show you a collaborative video poem that we made late last year, and it was created in response to the Midnight Survival campaign of the Climate Vulnerable Forum. So the Climate Vulnerable Forum is made up of 48 countries who are at the forefront of the climate crisis, or who will be the most affected by the climate crisis. The Philippines is a member of the Climate Vulnerable Forum. And they put out a campaign late last year. They started a campaign to pressure governments to submit their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, as part of the Paris Agreement. No? So I won't get into the technicality of that, but basically the NDC is a country's commitment to cut down carbon emissions. That's one way of looking at this legal instrument. And as signatories to the Paris Agreement, governments are obliged to submit this. The deadline was December 31. And if the concern was that if countries don't submit their NDCs by December 31, the next deadline set is 2025. And if we wait until 2025 to start working on reducing emissions, it will be too late to curb the impacts of the climate crisis. So, so we invited poets to respond and support, to lend their voice to this campaign. And the response was that people were glad to have this opportunity as poets to share their views and to share their words and their skills or their craft in response to a very concrete climate. So, and the result of that was Midnight Survival, Midnight Climate Survival, the video poem, which we'll show you at the end when I'm done. So I think what would be useful for everyone, I hope, this morning is some discussion on how do we design creative collaboration? How do we design engagements so that people can get together, creative people can get together and share their skills and their knowledge and come out with something compelling or provocative to galvanize action. So one thing we emphasize is transdisciplinary engagement, and both Engineer Trelly and Deign already spoke of the value of this. No, when we work in silos, that narrows the horizon of possibilities. So we need to learn how to work across disciplines if we're in academia, and even across our narrow concerns. That's also being transdisciplinary is when we look beyond our immediate concerns to what other people are working on or interested in or worried about even. Second is we tend to look for unlikely allies. So connect is a verb, just as a reminder to everybody that it's something we have to actually do and put into action beyond social media. And what a friend and ally pointed out to me before is social media is the end, no? It's not always the means. So before we put something on social media, a lot of work has already gone into research, into creating the communication and so on. So it can't be, connecting has to happen on the ground as well. And we should, again, it goes with being transdisciplinary. By looking for unlikely allies, we avoid the trap of preaching to the choir. We avoid the trap of speaking in an echo chamber or in a bubble. So sometimes we might even work with people that would be considered somebody who contributes to the climate crisis rather than somebody who is fighting to switch around the climate crisis. But if we don't work with unlikely allies, how are we going to push for systemic change? So I think this is something I want to emphasize, that we can do what we need to do as individuals, but we also need to push for and demand larger systemic changes for us to be able to create kinder futures. So this is why it's also important to think against purity and to recognize that we're all composite beings and composite creations. We're made up of so many different things. As humans, we're also made up of bacteria. We have so many microorganisms living inside us. We also carry toxins around us now. And so we're made up of all of these things, and we want to reflect that in the way we do our work. There's no such thing as purity. And this again ties in with finding unlikely allies, and it also links back to being transdisciplinary. And we always start, or we step out of our plans. We move things forward by inviting people to engage. And in that invitation to engage, we ask people to confront what's happening, to question what's happening, but also very importantly, we invite people to play. Because it's through play that that creativity can thrive. And also, part of the fun of the play is flipping processes. So, like often, the way a text is made, first the text is made and then an illustration is made based on the text. But in the process of ekphrasis, which Agam Agenda used, is we started with a photograph instead of the photograph coming after. The photograph came first, and then people were invited to write text about that. So it's important, or it's, well, not important, but I think the word I'm looking for is it's been very fruitful to design for us at the Agam Agenda, to design structures where there's a basic architecture, but people can do what they want in that space. And people can work with resources that they have at hand. So, so collab equals improv. When we ask people to collaborate, we also ask them to improvise. And this is very simple, working with resources at hand. When we watch the video later on, you'll see that the poets used their phone cameras. So this wasn't some fancy, highly, big budget production. People took their videos with their phones and sent their videos to us, and we edited them. So that's one example of working with resources at hand. And then this kind of collaboration asks us to be open to uncertain outcomes. So we often start with a big promise, but we're also very aware that because there's so much uncertainty and so much room to play within the structure or process that we decide, there's also always this fear or this worry that we could fail. And failure is okay, because what matters when there's failure, sometimes what can matter more than the actual outcome was the fact that people got together and to work on a shared premise or a shared idea or a shared project. And sometimes that coming together, that gathering is enough of an outcome. Okay, but then also the uncertain outcomes means that we're open to surprise and delight. And these are so important in work that can be exhausting, work that can be depressing. We have to have room for surprise and delight and joy so that we can keep on going. And finally, another element of collaboration is that it becomes shareable, replicable, and scalable. So at Agam, we think of this in terms of tentacles reaching out, or mushrooms and mycelia spreading spores around the world. So what we often say in Agam is, if we do this and somebody else picks it up and does it, that's great. You know, it doesn't mean that we lost ownership, or it doesn't mean that somebody stole our idea. It means that it's being picked up elsewhere and our spores are spreading. So as much as possible, we try to design collaborations that are shareable, replicable, and scalable. So I thought that today I would think about what are the elements that we have in our work that are useful for others in their own campaigns, in their own activities, and in designing collaborations. So that's us, that's our work. This is what we do. If it sounds crazy, yes, it is crazy. And we really enjoy that. But why is this all important? Why do we do this? Again, there's a role for everyone in addressing the climate crisis. And one story I really love about why collaboration and art matter is a story a friend told me. Yuvan Aves, he's a young naturalist based in India, and he has been involved in campaigns where young children create art to save wild spaces or conservation spaces in India. And he said that when we're in forums like this, or when policies are being negotiated and campaigns are being organized, there's no space for a 9-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 7-year-old to participate. But when you tell a story and you ask a child to respond with art, then you're giving a 4-year-old a way to participate in saving a wild space. And then taking this art back to the communities that are affected by extractive, destructive projects gives them strength also. So he was able to tell a story of how the paintings created by young kids gave a fishing community strength when they saw that they're not alone, and young people in the future are concerned about what happens to us. So there are many unpredictable and surprising outcomes from doing this. And really, a question we keep asking in our work is, how do we show up for each other across space and time? Especially now, we're all living under the pandemic. We can't always be physically together or see each other. We can't travel to the places where extractive projects are being put in place, to physically be there and stand in the way of these things happening. How do we show up for each other now? And how do we show up for each other across time? How do we show up for the future when our lifespan is so short? And we really feel that more than minds, more than just minds, we need hearts and hands involved. And this is where art has a great role to play. Poets, artists, writers, imaginative people have a great role to play in moving our hearts and moving our hands. And I'll end with a very short sharing of the words that inspire us this year are iterate, deviate, and elaborate. And those are words from the theorist Donna Haraway. And it describes a project where people all over the world started crocheting coral reefs out of waste material. And so there's materiality involved, but even without going to a coral reef to see a coral reef, people were able to express their desire for coral reefs to be protected in crocheting. And they ended up with thousands of collaborators. This was an art project that ended up with thousands of collaborators. And what really made it move forward was iteration, deviation, and elaboration. So with that, I invite everyone to embrace uncertainty, reimagine the climate conversation, and get involved in rewriting our futures. So I invite everyone to listen to Agam the Climate Podcast, follow us on social media, get in touch if you have any ideas for collaboration or if you want to collaborate. This is for everybody. We can all get involved and we all have a way to contribute to a kinder future. And before I close, I want to share that our beautiful octopus logo was designed and created by no less than Farah Manuel Nolasco, who's with us this morning and who I'd like to thank for inviting me to share the work of the Agam Agenda. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much po, Dr. Padmapani Perez po. For those who have the link, nakikita po natin siya sa chat, we can check it siguro ma'am after the sessions, after the webinar series, or even days after, we can share with our friends and whatnot. So thank you very much po, Dr. Padmapani Perez. Okay na po to wrap everything up siguro before our Q&A, our question and answer portion. I'd like to have 5 points po siguro for just to wrap up everything sa discussion natin on designing local solutions for climate change with MX Deign Frolley Soriano, we have Engineer Trelly Marigza, and we have Dr. Padmapani Perez. 5 points in terms of connecting it to DEMJA or DEMHA, in terms of our able term for that inspired our CCA webinar series this entire month, is to open our eyes. I think that's the very first step in designing local solutions for climate change. The very first one, base rin ito sa mga presentation ng ating speakers, the very first one is to open our eyes. To open our eyes to all of the issues, social issues, and the problems that are permeating all of our lives. Communities, individuals, conglomerates and whatnot, all of us are involved in order to address all of these issues. And once we open our eyes, therefore the second one is we engage. Examples like Trelly, Engineer Marigza with engaging in different groups, with Deign Frolley Soriano engaging in different organizations, and we have Dr. Padmapani Perez in terms of collaborating with different groups and people. And the third one is to interconnectedness, is to constantly connect with different people. And sabi nga rin ni Dr. Perez is to connect with unlikely allies. Parang babalikan din natin yung punto ni Deign kanina on this revolution, in this ecological revolution. In this ecological revolution, importante rin if we make alliances and allies, and even with unlikely allies then, we have to constantly connect with that. And of course, in transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary aspect in terms of addressing the issues of environment concerns. And of course, fourth one is creativity. Syempre, dun papasok naman yung purpose din ng CCA in putting out this kinds of webinar series. The purpose of art, that sabi nga ni Mao Zedong, diba, that there's no such thing as art for art's sake. So we make use of art, our passion, our literature, literature, gaya nga rin kanina, yung purpose ng Agam Agenda. You make use of words that reject the jargons. Ibig sabihin, we connect personally, we connect to different issues and concerns, and connect to the public as much as we can without necessarily putting ourselves away from them or putting ourselves such in an ivory tower away from the grassroots level or the community. And syempre, once nakapag-create na tayo ng literature, music, performances, dances, visual arts and whatnot, that would communicate to the public kung ano man yung concerns and struggles and points and campaigns natin. Syempre, meron yung platforms. How are we going to reach them? And then nakikita natin from Deign's experiences, you go directly to grassroots level, to communities, talk to elementary schools. And of course, experiences ni Engineer Marigza and Dr. Perez, you talk to government agencies, you talk to different organizations, you directly go to the Senate in order to communicate more. I think yun yung mga platforms. And of course, sa panahon natin ngayon, ng mga bata, millennials like me and or Gen Z, and of course, even older batches or generation, we make use of social media. We make use of social media in order to have greater reach of audience. Pero syempre, we have to make use of research in order to bring out information or well-researched or factual information or details and documents out there. So again, the very first one is to open our eyes. DEMJA nga, hindi ba? So now to officially move to our next part, I would like to ask our audience or our attendees to kaunti na lang, mga 5 to 6 minutes na lang tayo. We just have to entertain few questions, and if you have questions, please field them or submit them via the Q&A tab kapag marami pa kayong maraming gusto bang matutunan or maitanong sa ating mga speakers. Now, to our dear speakers, may I now proceed to our Q&A portion po, ano? Okay, so we have one question from an anonymous attendee. I think this is, I know, may dalawang question na po pala tayo. So the first one, I think po, naka-address po ito sa lahat ng speakers natin. So what can you advise for business owners, especially those who have only their eyes on their business, to participate in such ecological activities? So pwede po ba na in order po ulit tayo? Kay Deign po tayo mag-start, then Engineer Marigza, and then Dr. Padmapani Perez. So let me repeat the question. What can you advise for business owners, especially those who have only their eyes on their business, to participate in such ecological activities?
I think for business owners, I think kasi medyo arising na yung field ngayon of what we call, circular economy and sustainability. So I think business owners would want to educate themselves about yung concept nga ng circular economy and how would, adopting policies and methods on circular economy would translate into, sustainable consumption of resources, paano sila mag-acquire ng mga, what do you call this, yung mga kakailangan nilang products para sa kanilang businesses and paano nila yun masosource out sustainably. And then later on, pag minamarket na nila yung product nila sa market, better kung paano ba nila at least kahit pa paano magiging competitive pa rin even if yung pinagmulan ng mga resources na yun are, sustainably sourced. Kasi minsan may tendency tayo that there's a tendency for eco-friendly products, say for example, to, be very expensive. So, may mga ganun kasi tayong notion. And actually, it's a reality. So, I think business owners should always be accountable for, yung consumption, yung na-extract nila from the environment. But at the same time, it's best to, educate them about the circular economy process. Paano ba natin mapapaikot yung nakukuha nating mga bagay-bagay from the environment multiple times within that chain hanggang later on dun sa end of life ng isang product. And I think hindi lang siya dapat nag-end also on the businesses but also on the consumers later on. And kaya nga rin tayo nagkakaroon ng problems with, products like plastic. Kasi nga hindi natin alam na, hindi naman plastic is not inherently bad in a way, but it's just, how we make use of plastic and how we source it out later and how do we use it after its, its life as a product. So, may mga ganun kasing konsepto na kailangan na maintindihan not only of, the consumers but also sa business sector. I think yung ibang speakers can also, contribute dito sa question na to. Thank you.
Thank you. Engineer Marigza po.
Yeah, I agree with what Deign has said, basically for circular economy. Una siguro if we could ask them to have green audit, ang mga business establishments, no, practice green audit so they can actually see the advantage of having environmental policies implemented in their own establishments and of course environmental practices. No? Yeah, then next is having eco-friendly products. Hindi lang kasi ito sa pang-groceries or supermarkets, hotels and everything, no. Like hotels now in the first world countries would now have they banned already yung mga small containers, sachets, shampoos and etc. They put in big containers na doon na lang nila kukunin yung gagamitin nila while they are staying in the hotel, yung ganon. Then practically, having LED lights, for example, controlling lights. This is one also of our proposal to urban planning, controlling light pollution. Yung ganon. Bring your own eco bags. Ako, in my bag, whenever I go out, I always have at least 3 eco bags in my bag. So that whatever I plan to buy, whether I plan or not, accidental buy, purchasing or not, I have my own eco bag, and therefore I eliminate collecting more plastic bags. In the fight for single-use plastics, I was the one who authored actually the regulating plastics in Negros, no. one of my issues there actually is the toxicity of the plastics. No? There are issues now that we are saying that we have actually eco-friendly bags, but actually yung mass production, commercial production of those plastic bags in the Philippines is not yet there. It's not viable. No? May nilalagay sila mga 2% na other organic materials or coming from vegetables and all that to the plastic bags, but just to make them so-called eco-friendly. But they are not actually eco-friendly. They become brittle and they become smaller, and they are easily ingested by animals, by the fish into the wastewater and all that. And the toxicity, yung ating, when we go buy in the sa restaurants, for example, takeout, they put them in plastic, di ba? Kung mainit pa yon, alam natin the science of it, especially kung oily siya, the toxicity sticks there. No, it mixes into your food, and therefore the toxins are into your food. You are eating the toxins themselves. No, so that's one of the issue. In the schools or in any establishment, for example, UP, if you can practice this for students to bring their own mugs, they bring your own utensils. When you go to the canteen, that's what you use, diba? So say for I mean you how many cups a day of coffee do you take in? So if you are using disposable, ilang cups yung masasave mo, diba? That, and of course containers, you bring your own containers when you go to the market. Kasi pwede naman yun, except aside from asking from the vendor to put your goods in plastic, you bring your own, especially for fish, for meat, and all that. And then we can lobby for the restaurants to use edible utensils. Meron na ngayon, edible plates, forks, spoons, and all that. So ito lang siguro yung simple things that we can advise our business groups to consider.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Perez, if you want to add.
Not much, except that I think one thing I learned from economists during this pandemic and listen to economists is a key thing that has to change in the way business is done is instead of prioritizing shareholders in a business, what would happen if business owners prioritized stakeholders instead? So I think that's one question that maybe business owners can think about, and also to widen the idea of who the stakeholder is in a business. So not just the owners, not just the shareholders, but also the employees at different levels of a business, and also the consumers. And also, I think we need to find ways or think of ways to really make destruction of the environment a liability for businesses. Because at present, it's too easy for business to get away with unsustainable practices. And it's the way the economy is set up, and that in itself also has to change, and it has to be. I think there's a role for policy also in creating incentives for businesses to become more sustainable. And I think, if businesses take care of people, then it's inevitable that businesses will have to take care of the environment as well.
Thank you po. I really do agree po dun sa mga points na yun. And it's very important now. Tatama rin po yung point ni Professor Guerrero that ramdam ba po ang urgency ng climate change. I think it shouldn't be just now. It should have been before and until the future, towards the future, kumbaga. So okay lang po, mag-entertain po tayo ng last question. From Irene. or Professor Irene Abigail Guerrero. I teach development communication and launched the Hindi Ako Sip-Sip sa Plastic anti-plastic straw use advocacy years ago. It's so difficult to share environment advocacies with students. How do we address apathy in a way na sustainable yung mindset change po? So, any of the speakers po may answer? Or in order po ba tayo ulit? Sige, Deign.
Oh my God. Medyo ano kasi yung question, may pagka-human aspect din eh. Ako, I always, ganito kasi yan. So, I come from, a bio background. So, syempre alam naman natin yung detrimental effects of, single-use plastic, ganyan and all. Pero ako, through the years, I've learned that I cannot change a man overnight or a woman overnight or for whatever, gender. Kasi kunyari, ewan ko ha, for me, parang, you do not use single-use plastic, or do not use straws. Pag sinabi ko siya kasi sa students ko, because I teach ecology students as well. So, pag sinabi ko siya sa kanila gano'n, hindi automatic for them na parang, kunyari at the snap of a finger, automatic hindi na sila gagamit ng straw when they go, kunyari, to Starbucks. Karamihan na students ko kasi, well off, so kaya nilang bumili in cafes and they use straws. But a lot of them, when I lecture about, yung ecology, ganyan-ganyan, hindi agad sila nagbabago. And, sometimes the trick is, minsan, gagamitin mo sila ng, emotional appeal. So, minsan, magpapakita ka ng videos of, sea turtles with large straws in their nostrils. Yung mga ganung videos. Pero, merong siyang limit or may hangganan lang yung emotional appeal or yung appeal to fear or yung appeal to pity na parang naawa sila because, some animals or, fauna are, suffering because of the consequence, because of the things that we do as human beings. So, at the end of the day, yun nga, ang ginagamit ko talagang approach is, what's at stake for those kinds of people, specifically for my students when I lecture about, yung mga sustainable practices, yung mga sustainable living practices. Ano ba yung pinanggagalingan nilang context na ganito sila, may options ba sila? I always think that people are not always given the right options. Like me, kung pupunta ako sa grocery to find, kunyari straw, paper straw man yan or plastic straw, am I given the right set of options? And also, kung titignan nyo rin kasi like single-use plastic, sando bag, sometimes I cannot afford to buy, di ba yung sinasabi nila, it's better to buy in bulk. Yung, di ba may mga ganun tayo na mas makatipid. Kasi, mas makakatipid, mas environmental friendly. But when you examine, say for example, Filipino culture, naka-embed kasi yung sachet culture sa atin. And also, pag iisipin natin, communities in the Philippines, especially the impoverished communities na hindi naman talaga natin maiiwasan, they can only afford things in sachets like shampoo, ganyan. And you cannot preach as an environmentalist. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na buy in bulk, di ba? Bibili sila ng mga naka-pint size or gallon size shampoo kasi hindi nila talaga ma-afford yon. So parang napakamata pobre ko naman kung idudul-dul ko yung advocacy ko na please save planet Earth, hindi nga kaya ng madla. So yung mga ganun tayong consideration when we want to really initiate behavioral change. Sometimes it's also finding the barrier, i-identify yung barrier. Ano ba yung barrier ng person na yun for him or her not to really change his behavior towards sustainable, living, ganyan. Kaya meron tayong, I think, sila, Doc Perez and Engineer Trelly, alam siguro nila yung theory of change, yung identifying, yung knowledge, yung practices, ano ba yung culture around the individual or the person. And makikita kasi natin yung barrier, bakit hindi nagbabago yung perception and behavior ng isang individual towards the environment. Kasi merong naghihinder. And as, as advocates, as change makers, yun yung gusto nating i-identify and unti-unting buwagin together with that individual. Hindi kayo magbubuwag Kailangan sila mismo yung mag-initiate. So, there are tricks, pero minsan meron din kasi siya talagang, kumbaga double-edged sword yung pagtanggal mo ng barrier na yun. But eventually, pag sila kasi nag-initiate at na-realize nila na nagbe-benefit both the environment and them as an individual, then yun talaga nakaka-instill ka ng behavioral change. I think our other speakers may anthropology major tayo dito, so they can really contribute to this question, please po.
Sige po, from other speakers po.
Yeah. Actually nag sumagot ako sa sa chat room kay Professor Irene, no. Na the easiest act siguro na pang-convince sa mga tao is to put a face on the environmental issue, and to really communicate it simply, katulad nga nung sabi earlier ng ating mga panelists na hindi ka, like Deign for example, na hindi, not every time na you use yung mga technical language, technical environmental language, we have to use the layman's language para mas maintindihan nila. Kaya nga, sinasabi ko earlier na yung community action together, basically you need to work in the context of the community. Hindi lang yun dun sa single-use plastics. Sabi nga natin, ito kasi yung pinaka-convenient, ito yung pinaka easy, no? Madali lang siya. Hindi ka na magdadala ng bulky containers. You just ask for the kung ano yung packaging ng tindahan na pupuntahan mo, yun na yun, you accept it because that's easy. And then I agree with the point ni Deign kanina dun sa mga sachet complex ng mga Pilipino. Basically because we have a lot na poor communities. Yung economic side kasi ng environmentalism natin. Sino ba yung nakaka-benefit? Kaya yung sinasabi natin na green products, we should approach or use organic food and all that, parang para sa mga sosyal, di ba? Pang sosyal lang yon. It's environmentalism is for tree huggers. Hindi sa mga millennials na katulad ninyo. Yung ganun na concept. How do we turn that into an idea that they understand more, that they feel more? For example, we have one of our members in the climate consciousness movement. Hindi siya ganun ka passionate noon sa environmentalism. But when they experience the tragedy of landslides, earthquake, typhoons, and all that, at nabiktima yung pamilya, they almost lost everything. Noon niya na-realize na yung issue ng environment is actually linked to our own lives, to our personal lives, to the daily things that we do. So, kung ma-connect natin yon in our advocacies, in our lectures, in the schools, yung practical na daily activities natin, kumbaga sa gender, sabi natin na you have, kahit nag-train ka na ng 1,000 trainings on gender, you cannot really understand that unless you put it into heart and practice it, because it's part of the air we breathe, no? And that goes the same with the environment, no? Ang issues natin sa environment ay ganun din. Kailangan i-emphasize natin palagi na we are responsible on the sustainability of our environment, and forgetting or being reckless about our environment will also lead to the end of our own species. So, yun lang siguro muna.
Thank you po, Engineer Trelly. May i-add po ba kayo, Ma'am Padma?
Yeah, I just want to point out again that while it's important to have campaigns and initiatives to encourage individuals to do their part, that really that change has to be systemic, and we need to go beyond one-time campaigns. Like if we look at Engineer Trelly and Deign, their examples, we really see months and years of their lives going into these engagements, right? and maybe that's what young people are looking for. I don't think that apathy is the issue. I think the problem is the lack of ways to feel like they're really making an impact and really making a difference. Um, and we as educators, as campaigners, as advocates, maybe we can explore finding ways to get young people involved so that they are calling out the companies producing the sachets, because those same companies have the capacity to make bulk systems possible, right? But they're not doing it. Why? So we have a role also in not just saying personally, I'm going to stop using single-use plastic, but also in saying, I want to hold accountable the brands that are polluting Philippine seas. How do I do that? Where do I participate in that? And they're already, so let's make these spaces available for our students and for young people. Point them. Sometimes it's just a matter of pointing somebody in the right direction for them to get involved, so that these become lifetime engagements and we feel that we belong to communities that are really working hard to create these changes, so that it's not just trendy, it's not just about buying the right things like a reusable straw or a menstrual cup or what have you. It's also about being part of a community that's engaged in the work of creating kinder, more equitable futures for everybody. So yeah, let's get young people involved in calling for systemic change, because it's not individual responsibility that's going to save the planet. It's systemic change that's going to save the planet. And your generation of young people, you have an incredibly important role to play in demanding this now. Demand it of governments, demand it of business, demand it of corporations. Because if you're silent, who's going to make the change if nobody's demanding it? Also, do we have a politician running in 2022 with climate change on their platform? I know a lot of young people are looking for that. And if we don't see it, then maybe we have to demand it. Because you know how politicians are. If it's not something that they're hearing, they're not going to pay attention, or it's not going to appear on their radar at all. So let's make noise. And finally, I think, it's really hard to love something that you don't know, diba? Oh, Valentine's. How do we love something that we don't know? And so many of us, we don't know the names of the birds we hear outside. We don't know the names of the trees that we pass every day. We don't know where exactly our food comes from and what is necessary to get that food to our tables, what labor is necessary, what ecosystems are necessary, what kind of ecosystemic relationships are necessary to get food to our table. And it's far beyond what we see in front of us, and it's an incredible world. And I think we also have a role to play in directing young people's attention to these things, to our surroundings, to the birds, the trees around us. I mean, it sounds fluffy and woo-woo and nice and cute, but I am dead serious about it. How are we going to care for the environment? How are we going to love the environment if we're not paying attention to it? So let's actively direct attention. And maybe that's one way to fight apathy if it's there. Although I'm not fully convinced that apathy is what we're up against. I think it's more than, it's deeper than that. And it's really, let's find ways for people to be involved for life.
Ganda po, ganda. Thank you. Yes po, Miss.
Habol lang. Kasi yung I'd like to put emphasis on the issue of ownership in advocacy work. I'd like to share with you my experience with one of the municipalities in Negros Oriental. There was this black sand mining that actually they were just saying that no, we are just dredging, but it was all actually black sand mining in Tanhay. And since the people know of my experience of having campaign for closing of mines and mining activities in the area, they call me as consultant to lead them in their campaign against this black sand mining, so it will stop and the company will go. But I told them that the people there should be organized first, and that since I am not from the area, I can just give them advice. But the primary activities, the leadership of opposing the mining issue should come from the community themselves. And that is what they did. And finally, after several months, we were able to close this mining activity, and the company close down their activities there. Another point is, I've been in a lot of issues with DNR, for example. Uh, the issue of critiquing and praising partners, for example, and other agencies in our campaign for the environment, we do we should try to praise them in whenever they do good, but we should not hold ourselves from critiquing and going against their policies if it's not good for the environment. See? So there should be a balance there, but we should not be sacrificing our principles as environmentalists. There is one actually international group that they wanted me to help. Actually, they wanted me to be part of the team um, for a certain advocacy. But I found out that they are actually concessionaires, or tawag dito, they have they have what's this? They have investments in this group, that we are opposing. So in the long run, we avoided. We did not go through partnering with this international environment group because basically their practice is against the principles that we are fighting for. So we should remember all this when we do our campaigns outside our communities and all that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much po, Engineer Trelly. And again, thank you very much po. Napakaganda and sobrang enriching po ng discussion natin from our three invited speakers po, from Deign, Frolley, Soriano, from Engineer Trelly Marigza, and Dr. Padmapani Perez. Thank you very much also to all of our attendees and participants who stayed, who spent their time in order to learn from our pool of speakers this morning. Just a quick plugs lang din, no, before we officially end. We make sure to follow also yung WWF Worldwide Fund, care of si Deign Soriano. We have Climate Consciousness Facebook page din po nila Engineer Trelly Marigza. You can also listen to or follow also Agam the Climate Podcast, Agam Agenda rin ni Dr. Padmapani Perez. Okay, and also from the Committee on Culture and the Arts, CCA, University of the Philippines, Baguio, on behalf of our chair, Professor Para Manuel Nolasco, we are also inviting everyone, University of the Philippines alumni, yung mga alumni natin, current students, faculty members ng University of the Philippines Baguio. We have Kimata, ang ating pong folio, na ang deadline po natin ay May 5. Yan. So this is open for visual arts and literary pieces. If you are highly interested, it's going to be spearheaded by the CCA, Committee on Culture and the Arts. And also, I would also like to plug next week, same time, 10 o'clock in the morning until maybe 11:30 or 12, ating week 4, ang ating final leg of this Arts Month celebration of our webinar series, care of CCA po ulit. That's on to maybe 11:30 to 12. You can register via our Facebook. Nandun po yung link ng sign-up sheets. Again, the webinar is free. It's free for all. Lahat po yan tayo. And of course, before we end, We also have evaluation forms na naipadala naman na po ni Ma'am Farah via the chat yung link. We will also send it on your emails for your feedback sa ating webinar today. And then we will send out the certificates right after, or siguro 2 weeks. 2 weeks pa yung ano po, no, yung pagitan before we send out your certificates after you successfully filled out the form. So again, thank you very much po sa ating speakers. Deign, Frolley, Soriano, we have Engineer Trelly, Marigza, and we have Dr. Padmapani, Perez. These are environmentalists. These are activists of the environment. So make sure na sana maka-engage din tayong mga participants, because I guess it's now more than ever to talk about, and not just talk about, but to act upon and act on it, on climate change and all of the problems, systemic problems we are facing. So maraming salamat po sa ating lahat, and magkita-kita po tayo. Ayan, sa susunod na webinar ng CCA next week, 10 o'clock in the morning. So thank you very much, and have a great lunch and a sustainable life ahead. Siguro yun na lang yung pinakadulo. So maraming salamat po sa ating lahat, and mag-iingat po tayong lahat. So maraming salamat po.
Corals are resilient, I've been told, and so are we. This is just another incoming tide to shore up against.
Another Gawan Nilabi to cross, knowing we plant native trees, remembering which burns even when wet, which mothered springs. We stitch our flags together, you and me, we are
told it is safer to forget. But old silences held in midnight waters taught us that to stay is to reassemble ourselves. To stay is to remember our maps.
Barrier broken. This high tide howls as the sea scours sand and soil, shatters sa tungang gabi. Our children trembling.
We rush towards it, gathering what is ours and isn't. It's what we've always done, taken. We kneel amidst the crimson lava and the purple sands. There is no other way to say goodbye.
But this memory to keep close. I plucked a tiny bleached skull out of sparse grass. Its rostrum still a small wonderment, hinging at the flange where the two mandibles join, where a mouth had opened, asking only for such a small need to be filled.
Donde lo pasado abre paso a lo posible. En esta víspera naciente, en este mundo hecho de tiempo y manos, al faltar tiempo, tienen que sobrar manos.